Before we begin, please note that this episode includes discussions of domestic violence and suicidal thoughts. Listener discretion is advised. If these topics are distressing for you, you may wish to skip this episode or listen with support. Relevant Aotearoa New Zealand helplines are accessible in the show notes. Naomi's story is a troubling, heart-wrenching listen. She bravely lets us in on the abuse and trauma she endured as a young first-time mum in a violent relationship with a manipulative man who would later become her husband. Together they had 2 more children, both healing home births, but the domestic abuse continued. One day, whilst working a shift as a midwife, Naomi spotted a brochure that said, "Family violence changes the brains of our children." This realization was the final straw for Naomi. She knew she needed to protect her babies from growing up in an abusive household, and she left their dad for the final time. He still had contact with the children, though no formal parental agreement was instated. Fueled by anger and jealousy when he discovered Naomi had met a new man, he took the children and told her she wouldn't be getting them back. The police could do nothing. Naomi desperately tried to get her children safely back into her care, but after many months of battling the system, and despite a clear history of abuse, including multiple protection orders, Naomi ultimately lost custody of her children to her violent ex. She was utterly powerless to protect her babies, something that nearly killed her. Find out how Naomi not only found the will to live, but went on to have another baby to a beautiful man, and now works to help heal the hearts of other wounded mothers. Her story is both deeply disturbing and profoundly inspiring. Oh, it's going to be such an important share, Naomi, and thanks for courageously going there. Let's get into it. Let's hear about your journey into motherhood and what that transition was like for you, what your pregnancy and birth with your first child was. What it entailed.
So I was young. I was 20, and I was in not a very healthy relationship. There was abuse of every form in that relationship, and there was just some circumstances surrounding her conception that were quite traumatic. And I won't go into details about it because other people are part of the story. But let's just say that it was, the decision to become a mother at that time was sort of ripped out of my hands. And I found myself in a family planning clinic. I left work to go to this family planning clinic, and I had to take a pregnancy test because I had missed my period. And the woman came back in and she just basically dropped the results on the table and said, "You're pregnant." And I said, I was just like gobsmacked, like shocked, and knowing, like, the full weight of that reality is that my life is changing from here on out big time, and I'm not ready for it. And so she just said, "Well, what do you expect when you don't have sex, when you have sex without a condom?" And because of some of the trauma that had gone around that, it just like jolted me again, and I felt all sorts of emotions. And the immediate thing was that, okay, I need to terminate because I can't do this. Like, this is very messy. And so that was kind of like stewing around in my head, but I'd always had this deep conviction about life and the conception of life. And so I had these two tensions wrestling within me. And long story short, I chose to keep my baby, and I went along with the pregnancy because of the trauma and stuff, there was quite a disconnection. I was trying to be maternal, not knowing like how you even do that at 20 years old, and with a set of circumstances. I at that point had a protection order against this person due to some physical violence that had gone on, and a lot of psychological stuff. And so I was also facing this as a single mother, as a single woman, and it was scary for me. And I remember getting a call from my baby's dad, and he was, wanting to make amends, and I just went with it because, well, I loved the person, but also I was scared and afraid. And what do you do? Like, I was just doing what was in front of me. Whatever was in front of me, I was just navigating it. And so we got back together and walked out the journey. But yeah, there was this disconnect. And I remember even like thinking of names and stuff. I had these beautiful names, but I couldn't connect the beauty of the names with the child. And like there was just this disconnect, but I just thought it was normal. Like I was, or I was not normal. Like why am I not really connected, and so yeah, just that journeyed out. Anyway, I ended up towards the very late stages of my pregnancy, I ended up in hospital because my baby had popped her leg or her foot underneath my rib cage and stuck it in between my lung and my rib cage, and I couldn't breathe. It was like really, really painful. And so I went into hospital, and it was my first taste of the system. Like I'd never really had to trust people in that manner before, and I realized very quickly that to me, like I'm very sensitive to people and things and what's happening around me, and I just felt like a burden. I felt like a hypochondriac, and but then this thing was actually really causing problems, but no one knew how to deal with it, and they don't think they'd ever experienced it before. So it's like the too hard basket, get it, and so anyway, I was in there and came out after she'd like popped her foot away from my lung and rib cage. It was fine again. So I ended up discharging. Very soon after that, I started having signs of labor. I had a show and all that stuff. And I remember being afraid. Like it wasn't an exciting time. It was like, oh, flip, like here we go. This is the roller coaster that I've been like anticipating. And anyway, I ended up in hospital, which was where I just thought that's where you birth. So, I just go with that. And then ended up in hospital. My midwife was very busy. She was in between myself and another client who was in preterm labor. And so that took the priority. And she needed to be present for that person. I understand that. But at the time, it was like I was abandoned into this thing that I had no idea what was happening. And because she was doing the juggle, it was just like, I was a bit anxious and with what was happening to my body. And so she would pop in and then just say, look, you really need to have an epidural. Oh, sorry, no, hang on. It was, you really need to have pethidine. because that's going to help you sleep all night long. And I said, but I don't want to have pethidine. I don't want to have any medication or drugs. And I'd spoken to her about that previously, because I'd had some really out there drug experiences back in my past, and I didn't want to have anything in labor. But she was just like, nah, you really need it. And then she sort of like looked to my partner and my mum and was just basically like, you need to talk her into it, kind of thing. And so the pressure was there, and I felt flooded, and I couldn't, I felt overridden. And but that was very common in my world because of the type of circumstances I was in with my relationship and my history as a child. So decision was overridden, and I ended up with the pethidine. And it wasn't a good experience. I didn't sleep a wink because I was, I just felt so spacey, so spaced out, and so not in this world that it just, I felt afraid inside, but I just couldn't even verbalize anything. It was just so scary for me. And so that ended up wearing off towards the morning. And then my midwife came back in and said, okay, well, you really need an epidural now. And I said, but I don't want an epidural. I don't want to have an epidural. And I hadn't really researched these things, but I knew that I didn't want it, and I didn't want a big needle going into my back. And again, the decision was like overpowering, and my decisions were overridden. And I just went with it, because what else do you do? Like, I'm just the annoying teenager that, or 20-year-old that has got her what she wants, sort of thing. And that's how I felt at the time. So I just complied, and I ended up with an epidural. And as the baby descended and it was time to push, I couldn't feel how to push. I didn't have any sensation. And so all of a sudden, there was like doctors, nurses flooding the room, my feet in stirrups, and my private parts exposed to the world. I'm like, in like total shock, and like I've got no idea what's going on. And then my mum's in my ear saying, you need to push the baby. The nurses and the doctors are saying, we're going to go for a cesarean. And my mum just said to the obstetrician, can you please give her a shot at labor before she goes for the cesarean? And he said, okay, we'll give you one shot. And I'm just like in a whirlwind. And then my mum just whispers in my ear, you need to push this baby out or she's going to die. And I was just, okay. So then I'm like, I don't know how to push. And I'm like crying and saying, I don't know how to push. And they're just saying, push like you do like you're doing a poo. So I just gave everything that I had. And immediately from that, I just felt this type of pain, because they cut my perineum, which was thick and not thinned out. It's supposed to do, and you're supposed to give the space and time for it to be able to do that. It was a thick perineum, thick muscle, and they just chopped into it. And that was the type of pain. And then boom, like she was out, and I felt that release. But it just felt like blood. It was just like a drop of blood. I just heard like splatter. And then she was taken, and I looked to my side. My partner left my side. My mum left my side. They were just all down at my private parts. I was in excruciating pain. And I just look over and I see this baby, and they're like doing recess. And it was just like, I just felt completely numb. Like there was just nothing left in me. and they ended up suturing me. The baby ended up coming to me, but again, there was just a complete disconnect. Like, I wanted to love her, but the disconnect was there. It was already there in pregnancy, and because trauma with the birth, it was still like this disconnect. And then I wasn't told when you're supposed to breastfeed. I didn't know how to breastfeed. And so they just hand me this baby, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm looking at its nose, and I'm looking at its eyes, and it's all big like hands, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, this is, like I didn't I guess it was that disconnect. Like, I didn't fall in love with the baby right then and there, and I was just more like, whoa. And then I it was my partner's cousin that said to me, and I mean, she's only like, she was younger than me actually, so she was probably about 18 or 19, but she had a baby, and she said to me, oh, you need to put the baby on the breast probably, like baby looks hungry. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what to do. And so she helped me, and I eventually got the baby attached, but she had this super strong suck, and I know now positioning and attachment wise probably wasn't that great because I had no clue what I was doing. And she just chomped on my nipples, and within like 24 hours or something, I had like blistered, like blood blistered, cracked, like excruciatingly painful nipples. And so whenever she'd get on, it was that same sensation, like, ooh. And I also had Raynaud's syndrome, which is like, I don't know if your listeners know, but it's like a vasospasm of the blood vessels in your nipples, and that can be excruciatingly painful. So the combo of that was just like, I wanted to feed so badly, like the breast, but it was just so painful. But I'm a very determined person, and so I was like, no, I'm just going to persevere with it, and I did. For about 2 nights, and then a midwife just came in and she said, no, that's it, you've had enough of being in pain, we're giving the baby formula, I don't care what anybody says, we're giving your baby formula. And I was like, but I don't want to give her formula. I don't want to give her formula. And she's like, I don't care, like, you've had enough, and I'm going to go and get some formula. So she went and got formula, gave it to my baby. And again, those decisions just fully overpowered my voice was just shut down. Like, everybody else knew better. I didn't know what I needed or wanted, and it was just shut down. And then, I felt guilty. I felt guilty that I'd done that. I had a bad feeling about it. Like, I was just like, and the next probably 24 hours, another midwife came on board, and the way that she was with me was like no other person that I'd in that medical space. She was very, like, just kind and compassionate and empathic. And she just sat with me, and she was like, you've actually been through a lot. She said, Naomi, you're doing a beautiful job. You're like, and even now it makes me, it just, it touches my heart, because that woman in that moment did not know how powerful her words and just her presence was for me. And she probably will never know. But yeah, she just was with me. And that's the word midwife, is with woman. And she was with me. She was not overpowering me. she was just literally present, and she just sat with me, and she said, okay, what do you want to do? I said, I want to breastfeed. She said, okay, let's figure out how we can do this together. And we tried nipple shields, and the nipple shields they worked, not the best, but like in terms of milk supply and stuff in early introduction, but it saved me like giving up breastfeeding. It saved the excruciating pain, the trauma that was with it, like and yeah, she just worked out whatever was needed and just sat. And when I recalled my notes, years later, to look back at this traumatic period of my life and do some healing around it, I read through her notes. Everybody else's notes were just like this, quick. It did not give the accurate picture of what actually was happening. It was just medical people, medical jargon, doing the tick box, and covering their own butts, really. But this woman wrote like a page and a half when she sat with me. She explained, she's like, and the words that she used, she was actually saying, this woman is a beautiful mother. And I was thinking, wow, like she knocked the ball out of the park for me. Like she's just like an angel. And that was very healing in itself, actually, to read back on those kind of notes. I knew what happened in that space. And so, reading through the medical notes, it was quite disappointing to read, because it's like, no, yeah, okay, but but seeing that was just, it was so powerful. So that was my first birth experience. And I remember walking out of that hospital with the baby. So I had a 5-day stay because there was so much going on. And I remember walking out of the hospital, and they helped me put the baby in the car seat, and I was walking out with the car seat, and I was thinking, when is someone gonna like come and take this baby? Because it was just that disconnect. Like I've come in here as one person, and I'm exiting with this baby, and they gave it to me. They gave me this baby. It just felt surreal. And but I was already on the trajectory for like postnatal depression, anxiety. Anyway, I got home, and it was the first time I started having panic attacks in my entire life. And I just felt like I wanted to die. Like I wanted to commit suicide. I didn't want to be in the world. Like I was just like, I can't live like this. And I remember my baby screaming one night, and I just thought, I'm a bad mom. Like I can't, I'm a bad person. I'm bad. Like I'm just bad, and I need to get out. And I ended up in crisis, contacted one midwife who was, so my midwife straight away went on holiday after this birth. She saw me maybe once postnatally and handed over to somebody else. And this other midwife, it was like kind of late at night when I contacted her, but I was in like maternal mental health crisis. And she was just like, why are you contacting me at this time? Like, you just need to wait until tomorrow. We can deal with this tomorrow. And it was like, okay. Like, it was just, again, like just overridden, and me just being compliant. And I was just like, I just felt like shit. Like, I'm just already thinking I'm a bad person. And then I'm like, so annoying for this midwife. I'm so bad. And it was just how my mum had a friend who was a midwife, and she just said, no, I'm calling her. So she called her, and she came over straight away, and she's like, nah, this, and got, the ball rolling and connected in. And long story short, ended up with maternal mental health, and maternal mental health saw this psychiatrist, and he put me on Arapax, which one of the side effects of Arapax can be suicidal ideation. And so that was the case with me. And within probably 48 hours of taking that medication, my suicidal ideation just went like through the roof. And so I had to contact them and say, I literally want to die, like right now. Like, and they said stop it immediately. So I stopped it immediately, and I just realized in that moment, I was like, you know what, I am responsible for my mental health and well-being, and I'm not going to go down a pathway where all these people think they've got the right thing for me. I know what makes me feel safe. I know what makes me feel okay and good and happy. And I'm going to write a list of every single one of those things, and I'm going to put it in front of my face every day. And so I did that. I just wrote down everything that would make me feel good, and looking at natural options and different things. And I just had it there all the time. And I was just looking at and doing it. And my mental health started to improve without that. And I ended up doing some cognitive behavioral therapy and other like trauma therapy and stuff like that. And I healed quite a bit. So yeah, that's the first story.
Yeah, what an entry into the world of motherhood, right? Did you have much in the way of family or friend sort of support around you at that time? Because that can, I mean, you saying that your mum had a friend who was a midwife and she came in, so obviously your mum was an ally. But yeah, what did you have in terms of support around you?
Yeah, so I was living at my mum's home. So so I was living under her roof and with my partner, and so I had them. And then I also had my dad, and I had like a good group of friends who've been through thick and thin with. So I was well supported in that way. It's just that the relationship that I was in was still, but there was some protective factors because we were in my mum's home. So, it was limited as to some of the things that he could get away with doing and not doing.
Was she aware of his abuse towards
They
you?
were all aware because there had to be a protection order, and that meant that there was no contact, no, like they had to know he was not allowed on the property, like, all that sort of stuff. So they were aware, but I was also very cautious about what I shared about my relationship with my family because I didn't want them to not like him. And I guess that in some way was protecting him, but I kept a lot of it quiet and hidden. But the things that I couldn't hide, like were there, My friends knew everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Naomi, I'm just to clarify, so you're living with your mum at your mum's with your baby, and you're still in a relationship with the baby's dad, but you've got a protection order against him.
So a protection order, when you have a protection order, you have the ability to, from my understanding, and it may have changed now, this is quite a few years back, but you have the ability to decide when that is instated and when it's pulled back.
Right.
So people with protection orders can still re-engage in relationship with their partner as long as there's no violence. If there's violence, they're able to say the protection order is reinstated, and you are this is the boundaries. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Okay. And you ended up staying with him for some time, didn't you? Because you had two more children with him. And yeah, I would love to hear kind of about their birth experiences, 'cause they're quite different to your first child's birth, and the journey your life took, I guess, um, over
Yeah.
that period. Yeah.
Yeah. So we separated. He ended up going to Melbourne to live, and I ended up yeah, we sort of worked on things and like long distance. And at the time I was studying to be a nurse. And I wanted to complete that. And so we sort of had a long distance relationship, and then, things seemed to be a lot better. And he took us over to Melbourne, proposed to me, and we decided, we made plans to get married. We ended up marrying in New Zealand like a year later, then went over to Melbourne after I'd finished my degree. And then, yeah, it was like quite a big transition because it was quite isolating, being away from everyone and everything that I'd ever known. And that was the first time I'd ever moved countries. So it was a bit of a journey, plus the trauma of that whole experience. In my head, for many years, I was like, I don't think I could ever have another child.
Mm-hmm.
But when my daughter was around 9 years old, I started to have the maternal desire again. Like I started to feel like, oh, babies are so beautiful. And I yeah, it's like we were in a different part of our relationship. It still wasn't what you would call healthy, but it was much better. And so I kind of opened up to the possibility, and I had the desire to want to be a mum again. And I had also trained to be a midwife at that point, and I ended up, yeah, I was working in a hospital where they were doing a pilot program for home birth midwifery. And so it was fully funded, and I got pregnant, and it was planned. So very different experience. And then, yeah, it was, I felt the connection to this baby. Like I journeyed through a very different experience. I felt the connection to this baby. And just jumping back, I did build attachment and bonding, strong attachment and bonding with my first baby. It just took time. So I remember at about 2.5 months old, I was walking down by the laundry in my mum's flat, and she looked up at me and she smiled at me. And that smile, it was just like, it was just like attachment and bonding's there. It was just like the flood of love, and like, you're so beautiful and I love you. Like it was there, and I felt like I'm okay. I'm doing a good job. Like she's smiling at me. She loves me. Like she actually loves me. And yeah, so and then that attachment and bonding just flowed from there beautifully. Yeah, so then, yeah, pregnant, feeling all the feels, like going through, but I was fearful of the birth because of what had happened before. And so and also because I'd done a lot of growth as a person, but also as a professional. I'd become a registered nurse, I'd become a registered midwife. I think I was also studying my postgrad in child and family health. So I had a lot of um, professional understanding of labor and birth and family life and the impact of birth and stuff. So I was like, I don't actually want to be in the hospital. It makes me feel unsafe. You know, even though I worked in the hospital, it makes me feel unsafe because I know how it rolls in that place. I know the culture and I feel unsafe in there. And so I was like, the only place that I feel safe would be at home. And I never intended or expected that I'd ever have a home birth. Like I'd never thought of it before. Or I'd thought of it and been like, no, that's not safe. Like the safest place is a hospital. But my thinking on that had totally changed. And so anyway, I contacted um, one of the midwives that I knew was awesome. And I said to her, hey, I'm pregnant. Would you consider taking me onto the home birth pilot? And she said, yeah, yeah. And so her and another midwife looked after me. And I had the most awesome healing experience. I was able to be in my own space. I had the pool in the bedroom. I had my own toilet. I was able to eat my own food. We had KFC. I had a bit of a pause with labor because I was so tired. And my midwives just said, look, we're just going to sit in the lounge and watch a movie. You go and have a sleep, and then we'll see what happens after that. And and so they got KFC, and we ate KFC, and then I went to sleep. Woke up about an hour and a half later, and boom, it was all on. And within a couple of hours, I was in the pool birthing her, and I felt every experience. And I remember feeling her head, even like as I put my hand into the water, I could feel her head, and I felt every sensation. But even though it was discomfort, like it's the ring of fire, but it was empowering. I was doing it, and I birthed this baby, and I looked at her, and I was like, you're mine. Like you look like mine, even, like she looked like my first baby, Faith. I was like, you're mine. Like, and it was just immediate, like that flood of love, flood of attachment, flood of bonding, and straight to the breast. And I knew what I was doing. I felt confident, and I remember my ex-husband saying to me, like, it was just an immediate thing, and he's like, whoa, you're so strong, Naomi. And like that even in itself was healing, like for me with him. Like, I was like, yeah, flip, I am super strong. And yeah, it was just a really healing, amazing experience. And my family were there, my parents were there, my girl Faith was there. She was part of the birth, and she was like coming, and she was learning, like the midwives were like, okay, look at this part of her back and see that streak, and this is how many, this is what it's telling us about her cervix and stuff like that. And so she learned so much through that process as well. And she would come to me, my big girl, and she would say to me, okay, it's day one today, Mum, what are you feeling today? And I was like, I'm feeling really, like I'd share with her, and then she'd write it down on her little notepad.
Oh,
And she did this for like 6 or 7 days. And then I still have it somewhere, like I've kept it because it's so tapu. Um, but yeah, it was so healing from what had happened, and yeah, just a redefining moment of birth, and my own personal strength. And yeah, so it was real beautiful. And then second baby, third baby was another home birth in this time it was in Brisbane, but I had to pay for an independent midwife because there was no home birth pilot. It was very medicalised in Queensland. And so, yeah, I hired an ex-New Zealand midwife that was in the Sunshine Coast practicing, and she was about 2 hours drive away from me, but I still wanted her and to be at home, you know. So that was another beautiful, amazing experience, and yeah, healing. So yeah.
Was Faith at that birth as well? Your daughter at that birth?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was. And she was, yeah, all a part of that, and the little one, Micaiah, as well. So Micaiah was probably only, oh, I think they were like 18 months apart, Judah and Micaiah. Yeah, so they were like 18 months apart. And yeah, so Faith was sort of like coaching Micaiah as what was happening, and you know, just fully present and like loving on her little brother when he'd come out, and yeah, just real beautiful.
Mm. You talked about the healing experience of having this empowering, gentle home birth supported by women who were, um, wise women midwives who knew how to hold that space for you and be with women, right, in their
Uh,
role. And I love that you talked about the part that Faith played in those birth experiences. I have no doubt that she will have experienced her own healing
yeah,
alongside you through that journey.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah,
You said earlier that things got a lot better in your relationship once he had moved to Australia and you were sort of long distance for a time and you grew a lot and learned a lot. And you said things weren't great, but they were a lot better. What
yeah,
what was still not okay in that relationship?
yeah. The psychological stuff was always present and always quite severe. Um, the physical stuff had stopped, which was really good. Um, there was occasional moments, but it was few and far between. My brother also lived with us at that point in time, and also my dad had come as well for a period, so there was limits on his behaviour again in the home. But I started noticing um, he had he went he was a person and is a person who's come from significant trauma also, and there was some big identity questions for him that he was wrestling with um, around his own conception, actually. And yeah, um, he had a very big, I think, yeah, it was a traumatic experience where he found out that his father was not actually his father biologically. And uh, at this time, his mum was also dying of cancer with the answers that he needed. And there was big stuff around that for him. And that started to re-trigger and resurface some of the behaviors, abusive behaviors. And when we moved to Brisbane and we had our other child, our third child, um, all of this was still playing out, and yeah, behaviors started to escalate, and I found out, um, long story short, that he had a gambling addiction and had gambled everything that
Mm.
we, and like thousands of dollars. And it was all gone. And he came to me one night and said, I've been telling you I've been going to work, but I haven't been going to work. I've been going to the casino. I've got this addiction. I can't sleep. It's like, it's so consuming me. And I've spent everything that we have. And now you're going to have to go out and work. And I was still breastfeeding like our baby. And he said, you're going to have to go and work and I'll stay at home with the kids. And he like threw that on me and then went to sleep. And I was in the lounge just like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? And like we're in crisis, like just constantly in crisis. And the violence just started to escalate again. The rages started to escalate. And this time the kids were like all being exposed to it. And I remember like I just thought, I started going for job interviews and like doing the things that I'd always do just to try and make it all okay. It's all going to be better. It's all going to be okay. But I was like, this is actually not okay. Like I actually can't leave this person with my babies. I can't just not breastfeed my baby and have all this worry going into a job where I'm responsible for life and death. I actually can't do it. And I basically decided I just can't do it anymore. And I'm going to go back to New Zealand. It was chaos, and long story short, ended up back in New Zealand. And the stuff went down, and long story short again, ended up with a protection order, reinstating the protection order and instating a parenting order. And in this process, he learnt very quickly about the system and how the system works. And very manipulative person, and ended up coming to me like, come on, like, this is not what we want for our family. This is not what we want for our kids. Like, and so we got back together and I dropped everything, at the door and, reunited. But it was just the exact same, like from day one. It was just escalating, and it was just messy and chaos. And I remember I was working as a midwife at that point, and I was walking down the hospital corridor, and I saw one of the things, the pamphlets that we give women that, and it was about how family violence changes the brain of our children. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. And I knew I have a responsibility to get out of this relationship once and for all now, because this is changing the brain of my babies. Like, this is setting them up for the same crap. And I cannot do that. Not on my watch. I can't. And so it was that catalyzed me into, okay, the final cut. Did that, and yeah, things were okay for a while. But when he found out that I was in another relationship with somebody else, he basically took the children. So one day, we didn't have a formal agreement. We were just sort of like playing it by ear, like, having them if he wanted them, he was having them. If I needed support because I was working shift work and stuff, then he'd have them. And yeah, but generally I had the full-time care of them. and the financial responsibility, which
How
he
old were, how old were they at this stage, Naomi?
they were probably about 5 and 4 at this stage. And yeah, and then he had them one weekend. He'd found out that I was in a relationship and that it was starting to get serious. And that weekend, he'd sort of thrown the card out to me a few times, like, you know, that I'm putting them in dangerous positions because I'm going to be with somebody else who wasn't even living in the area. Like they were in Palmy and I was in Auckland. And that, you know, I'm neglecting them and all the head stuff. And ended up, yeah, I dropped them off one weekend, and that's when he basically said to me, "You're not getting them back." And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm not getting them back?" He said, "Don't come to my house. Don't come and pick them up. You're not having them." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, and so I rang the police, and they were like, "There's nothing we can do because there's no order in place currently." And I just realized, like, oh man, like I was really dumb. Like, I I I I was too I was boundaryless with him, and it set us all up for this. And so yeah, I, long story short, again, ended up in a probably, yeah, a very long drawn out custody battle because COVID happened. um COVID happened. I ended up marrying the person in Palmerston North. Darcy is now my new husband. And then I left Darcy because I said, like, I've got the care and protection of my children. That is my priority. But I'll come and join you, you know, once this is all sorted. And so I left him and went back to Auckland. And yeah, COVID happened. My contracts got pulled. I was working for Plunket and the DHB, two different roles, midwifery and nursing. My contracts got pulled, so I had no way of getting an income, no way of getting a job because everything was on lockdown. Um, I I had no way of getting a benefit because uh, I was married, and you're not allowed to have a benefit if you're married, even if they're not able to financially support or provide for you. And so I found myself in the WINS office, like on the daily, begging them, saying, "Please help me. There are, you know, I've got my babies, and I cannot leave them. Please help me, please." Like, this is a situation. This person cannot afford to pay my rent and my things and everything else when they've got a responsibility. He had 3 girls, 3 dependents. And they were just like, no. And so I had to fight. I had to fight that decision. And I put a review of decision and went up again with a big panel of consumers and head people in work and income. And I shared my story, and you know, I'm begging people, like, please help me to stay. And it just, like, everything got pulled back because of COVID, and it just got dragged out. And it was like 12 weeks of no income, not able to provide, not able to even get a food grant, nothing. And my husband in Palmy said to me, "Babe, you got to come. Like, you got to let go." And it was the most devastating time of my life. And yeah, I remember driving out of Auckland when, you know, it had all just imploded on itself. driving out of Auckland away from my babies, and the cry, the weeping that came out of me was a sound like no other. And it was just painful. And yeah, it was a devastating period. But I thought, I'm not giving up the fight. So I continued to go down this track, and we had to have interviews with a psychologist, a court-appointed psychologist. But this psychologist did not understand family violence in the way that was needed. He had a surface textbook understanding of family violence, and he also carried a bias towards the father. And I it's only through reflection. At the time, I was just like, okay, like, I'm going to share the story. Like, he's going to know, like, he's a psychologist. Like, and I shared everything. I shared it all. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to get my babies back. Like, not, they're going to understand like what's actually going on here. And then at the very end of that, like, it was like a 18, 19-month period. It was a long time of just these interviews with the psychologist and stuff. He came to me. Oh, he said in the final interview, he said, Naomi, do you want to know what I think? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, I think you are a nurse and you are a midwife, but you, Naomi, are not a nurturer. And when he said those words, you are not a nurturer, it was like the biggest slap I'd ever had in my life. And it was like, I knew in that moment, I was just like confused, but I knew, oh my gosh, if he thinks this, I'm not getting my babies back. Like, he's the big person here. And I said to him, like, because it was like spinning. I was just like, I said, but I am a nurturer. I was like, I nurture my kids, but I don't just nurture my kids. I actually nurture everybody. Like, I am a nurturer. And he said, no, Naomi, you are a nurse and you are a midwife, but you are not a nurturer. And I was so stunned and in so much shock, and it was so much trauma. He's like, do you want to know what you need to do? And I said, yes. Yes, I do. He said, will you do it? And I said, yes, I will do anything that I have to do for my babies. And he said, you need to go on a journey with attachment and bonding. You need to get in touch with this person who was also had a bias towards fathers, because I researched that person. And you need to go down this attachment bonding journey, and you need to like unpack it. There's certain people who are attachment specialists, and you need to go down the journey with one of those people. And I said, okay, I'll do it 100%. And I left that room, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm not a nurturer. Like, that's what I thought I was here for. Like, I'm not a nurturer. Like, I've shared everything with him, and he's seen all this stuff, and he's the one that knows this kind of stuff, and he's saying I'm not a nurturer. Like, and I went home that day, and I literally, like, I could not handle clothes being on me. I just stripped off naked. I was completely naked, but that's how I felt in my soul. I was just like stripped, and I dropped to the ground, and I just wept. And it was an excruciatingly painful cry. It was painful, and I felt the depths of loneliness. I felt so alone. My family at that time had also abandoned me to the perspective of this highly manipulative person. And because I had hidden so much of it, so they didn't know the full picture, and he'd been on good behavior, you know, when they'd been in the home. And so I felt the depth of loneliness and abandonment. And I just remember, yeah, everything that I thought was real and everything that I believed was challenged in that moment. It was like, who am I? What am I here for? Like, and if I'm not that, I'm not a nurturer, then I'm damaging my babies, and that is the depth of my pain. Like I couldn't live with that, and I ended up yeah I ended up getting off the ground, and I at that point in my life, that's where I really discovered God. Like I realized that I needed bigger. The world could not satisfy me. The world could not give me justice. The world could not make it right. I was stripped of everything in this world, and that's where my relationship with God started to become tight, and I experienced God as a person and a savior, and someone that would comfort me in my despair, and that's how I got through. And I just remember getting off that floor and then curling up into a ball on my bed, and I just felt like I was leaning in the arms of God, and um yeah, like it was going to be okay, even though it wasn't okay, and you know, but I just had that sense, and yeah, I journeyed it, and then after about 3 years of the court battling, I think it was, oh, I don't even know how long it was. It was a long time. The judge came with the final decision, and it was a no. You're not gonna get your babies back. And a lot of the weight came down to, which it does in court, in family court situations, comes down to the psychologist perspective and the judge's perspective. You know, it's weighing that stuff. Yeah, and so it was a no. And when that happened, again, it was just like the most painful thing, and I just went away from the world. I went into a shack for 3 days and 3 nights. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I felt physical pain. Like if I'd go to try and go to sleep, I just couldn't. And I started to research, like, how am I going to take myself out? Like, how am I going to actually do this now? Like, I've got to get out of here.
How am I going to take myself out? Meaning, how am I going to end my life?
How am I going to end my life? And that was my search. How do you commit suicide? Like, what is an easy way to commit suicide? And I started to get all these, what do you call them? Like prompts or like ideas. But as I started reading through them, I started seeing that like suicide fails as well. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the one option I feel like there is to get away from this pain, if I stuff that up, it's going to be even worse. You know, like this situation's going to be even worse. And it was like my brain wanted to give me options to help support my, you know, like the pain that I was experiencing. But when I really looked at it, I was like, that's not a good option either. And I was like, and I know, like, it's leaving my babies behind as well, and they have to deal with not only the world that I'm navigating, but the pain of me leaving. And so I was like, flip, I really kind of don't have a option here. Like, I'm gonna have to draw a line in the sand and and believe that God will help me through this, and I have to feel this pain anyway, like, and walk through this pain. And so I did. I was like, okay, well, that's really the option. It's either I allow, because I felt like this dark cloud just like wanting to squash me down, like, and I thought, I'm either gonna, yeah, my options are commit suicide and risk the potential of a fail, or die, and then or go through this pain and allow it to squash me down, like just overtake me, my being, or I draw a line in the sand and go, this is really hard, this is really big, I do not understand it one bit, but I am choosing to believe that there is something in this that will work together for good. And so that was the option I chose. And I got up, I went and had a shower, and I said to my husband, because he plays the guitar and we both sing, can we go and worship? And so we just took the guitar, went into the prayer house, and just did karakia, and I saw a vision of Jesus walking towards me, and he had shoes, and I had bare feet. I'd taken my shoes off, and he had these sandals on his hands, and he just put sandals on my feet. And then there was like a crown, and he had a crown, and he just put this gold crown, plain but beautiful, just put this crown on my head. And all of a sudden this flood of people came into the room, and it was like, yeah, like a cloud of witnesses. And then one person just put their hand on my shoulder, and I felt like it was my husband's first wife who went to heaven. And it was almost like she understood the pain of separating from her babies, and the pain, the excruciating pain of separation, the bond between mother and child. And I just had this overwhelming peace, a peace that passed all understanding. And I was just like, it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I got up from that, and I walked out, and that's where it stayed. I was like, okay, now my job is to be intentional with my babies. Every moment that I do have them, I cherish that, and I want to impart the value of me as a mother to them, but also I want to treasure every moment that I get with them, and I value it. It's tough, but it's so precious. And so, yeah, that's the journey. And I have heard way too many stories of mothers who have walked this journey and committed suicide. Even last night, I heard that similar story, and I know that pain, and I know that option, but I also know what is over the other side of that. And if I can share and impart with any woman in crisis to keep walking through, there will be a way. There are going to be things that, divine things that come that help you with the journey. You're not alone. And that's what I would want to impart into any woman in crisis in this context of trauma. Yeah.
Wow, such a powerful, powerful story, Naomi. Is there anything like obviously your connection to God and finding God was a huge piece of your healing journey of the vision of hope and yeah. Is there anything else that was important to you on your healing path that stands out that might be helpful for others to hear who are on a similar journey? Yeah, just tools or understandings or services
Yeah.
that could be helpful.
Definitely. I think that there are so many amazing services and tools to equip you in the journey. And it's not just one thing, there are multiple things along the journey, and every single person's journey through trauma looks different. We're all unique. My like the saying that I have for mamas is trust your instincts and do what works. If something doesn't work for you, let it go. If something is working and you're getting progress, then keep doing it, because everything, it's like building a house, like, or rebuilding, like the foundations. You lay down the foundations and you do brick by brick by brick by brick, and you're actually building something stable and strong and beautiful. And so it's cognitive behavioral therapy, relational emotive behavioral therapy was very helpful for me. um, I did a course called Living Wisdom, which helped me to understand, and I also now facilitate that program. Helped me to understand basically like the psychology and of human nature, and how things work, in relationships, and also gaining like negotiation skills and boundary setting, and like those basic things, and allowing my voice to practice those things, because what it was used to was shutting down and allowing the overriding, but now my voice rises so that I feel like when I'm engaging in situations, I can just fully love all people, because even the people that have abused or whatever, because I'm able to use this to speak, and so it's finding those things um, to equip you in your journey, and yeah, definitely like trauma counseling, somebody who has insight like yourself, Carla, insight into the depths of someone's trauma and compassion, and an ear to hear. With trauma, it's so important to feel heard. And for somebody who is walking the journey with you, to be a listener, to really understand what you're sharing and the depth of what you're sharing. Yeah, so that would be my.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you raised that, and it takes me back to that piece of your story after Faith's birth and the horrific treatment that you experienced in the hospital, but that one midwife who
Mm,
sat with you and asked you what you needed and how you were doing and took time
yeah,
to be with you to enable you to feel seen and heard, which for women who've experienced birth trauma, at least, I can't speak for wider trauma, but there's always this undercurrent of disempowerment that was part of their trauma experience. And that disempowerment typically stemmed from this I'm not feeling seen or heard
yeah,
right now. And so I think that for anybody who's experienced trauma, part of the healing process is being supported to share your story
Yeah.
with somebody who can hold that space to listen and validate your experience and hold no judgment over whatever it is that you want to share and offload about your experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time.
I think in the wake of birth trauma particularly, but other sorts of trauma that you've been alluding to throughout or talking about throughout this podcast episode, is that a common theme is this experience of feeling shame and guilt and like I'm to blame for the trauma I experienced. And I'm not bonded with my baby. What sort of a mother am I? I'm a bad mother. I feel so much guilt and shame, and I should have been stronger. I should have advocated for myself better. All these sorts of things. And so to be heard by somebody who enables you to share those pieces of your experience that you have been holding on to and just feel too shameful to admit to
Yeah.
is hugely healing. And then, especially if you can have it reflected back to you that no, this was not your fault, Naomi. No, you were not the cause of your trauma, and your responses to your trauma are that's your body going into survival mode. This isn't about you being a bad mother, etc., etc. All the things that actually it's beautiful. At the moment, I'm in another round of healing birth practitioner training, which is this 10-week program that I take people through, sort of helping them to learn the art and science of holistic birth trauma support, essentially training others to do the work that I do. And in this current cohort that I'm working with, you're on my course, and
And it's so good, guys.
oh, it's so awesome having you on there. But yeah, please tell us more about where you're at in your life now,
Yeah.
and what work you're doing. Where has this journey brought you to now?
Yes. I This journey has really firmly established identity in me and purpose. And I know without a doubt, whether anybody, psychologist or what, I know who I am, and I know that I am a nurturer. And I know that I'm a mama at heart, and um, definitely not perfect, but that's who I am. Yeah, my heart is and skill set. Obviously, like I've got these skill sets. I no longer am a midwife. I still do registered nurse work, but my heart is to see the maternal voice rise, and for her to be able to let out a roar. And so I feel like I'm still working out some of my purpose exactly. And that's why I haven't gone down anything specific yet. I kind of am a jack of all trades at the moment. I can do sleep consultancy, sleep coaching, mother baby coaching, trauma stuff, crisis stuff, grief stuff. Like I have a wide skill set, but yeah, my heart is really for the maternal voice to rise. So I run a group called the Mamas Tribe, and it's once a month here in Tauranga. And it's just basically bringing in people like yourself, Carla, who have such a wealth of wisdom and a heart for mothers, and the maternal voice to impart their gold and treasures to mothers, so that they can pick that up and do what they wish with it. And yeah, we've had some really open and raw discussions in that space. Um, in this climate, where it's very, like, sometimes the voice is very controlled. Like, we've got to be PC. We're not allowed to say this. We're not allowed to say this. But I want it to be a space where we don't have to be afraid of sharing truly what's going on for us as women and as mothers. And so, yeah, the journey is still unraveling for me, in its fullness. But yeah, my purpose is, to be with women, and to, yeah, and support the maternal voice to rise. Yeah.
Awesome. And as part of that, I don't know if any listeners have heard the podcast episode I did with Kiki. Yeah, if you haven't, go back and have a listen to it. But Kiki, she came along to one of Naomi's, the Mother's Tribe talks that I was the guest speaker at, and I was talking about birth trauma. Kiki wasn't actually coming along as somebody who identified as having experienced birth trauma. She was coming along in her role as an employee at the Village NZ, which is an organisation that's all about supporting mothers, new families, to access free support in their parenting journey. And so she'd come along in that role, but as soon as I started talking about what birth trauma is and what people's experiences of birth trauma look like and what they experience in the wake of that, she was pregnant with her third at the time. She realised that her first two births were traumatic, cesarean births, and she went on to, we did a bit of work together thereafter, and she went on to have this amazing home birth with her third baby, Lara. And Kiki's on the course as well with us, doing the healing birth practitioner training. So I love that, people are finding their way into using their experience to support others on their healing journey and to rise. And I love that, like the finding that maternal voice, that roar that, so many of us have felt too intimidated or squashed or fearful to voice. Yeah, but it's so needed. And is there anything you wanted to share? You're also mama to a beautiful little 1-year-old Zahar now too. I don't know if there's anything you want to share about her birth story or your experience of parenting her, I guess, after, in the wake of all that's happened to you, or if that's another podcast episode, that's fine.
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
I'm happy to share it, and then you can edit and cut whatever you want. Like, yeah.
Okay.
So this pregnancy, obviously, different because it was a new relationship. And we actually have a blended family of now nine children. And so, yeah, it was a beautiful experience. Connection there, much better environment, felt like supported, loved. And the journey was good. When I came to birth, however, so I had planned another home birth, of course, after the two amazing redefining experiences that I had with home birth, and out of medicalisation. So I planned it. I bought myself a pool. I did have a pool in Australia, but I didn't bring it back with me. So I bought myself a new birthing pool, well, secondhand, and like I prepped everything. I had everything in order for the home birth. I was ready to birth at home, and I was just waiting, and I did not think it would go any other way because I've had 3 normal vaginal births before. And so, yeah, I ended up not going into labor, and that just kept happening. I just wasn't going into labor. Ended up like 2 weeks kind of like post dates, and then I was lying in bed one night and got a pop, and I was like, oh yeah, waters. Got up, I dribbled and went into the bathroom, and it was dark stained, like it was um, meconium liquor, and yeah, just kind of like ended up needing to get a CTG done, and it sort of like was going to change things a little bit. Um, but I just the hospital wanted me to go in, and I went in, and they talked through things with me, and their plan was like, we're going to have to induce, we're going to have to do this, we're going to have to do that. And I just thought, no, I don't want to do that. I actually don't. I want to go home. I don't want to be stuck here. And the baby is like, the fetal heart was reassuring, the trace was reactive, like, and so I thought about it, and I just said to them, they think that okay, let's start the induction. And I just said to them, actually, I think I'm gonna go home. And they're like, what? I'm like, I'm gonna go home. I want to get into established labor, and I've done it before, and the baby's heart is okay, like the trace is reassuring. I'm going to go home. And they were like, well, if you do that, you're going to have to sign this paper, and you're risking this, and you're risking that, and you're risking this, and risking that. Now sign on the dotted line. And really, even if you're going to sign, we're still saying this is a very bad decision. Like, you shouldn't be doing it. You're risking so much, and you're this, that. And because I know the spiel, because I'm familiar with the spiel, it wasn't as hard for me as it would be for some other woman, because the pressure is on. Like, when you're signing your life away and your baby's life away for a mother, that's the biggest thing, is like, I'm responsible to look after this baby, like, but yeah, I had a peace about it. And so I signed, and I said, okay, see you later. And they said to me, how long are you going to be away from the hospital? And I said, give me 48 hours and I'll see how it goes. Because I was already post dates. I had the Met There was some things that were like, what is going on here? I'd never been post dates like that before. Always 5 days, but then it was a different partner. So anyway, I went home, and then we made love, did nipple stimulation. I took the teas. I did rebozo. I did spinning babies. I did curb walking. I did, you name it, I did it. Walked along the beach. We cut a kia. We got on the gat, and we were worshipping, and like nothing happened, and it just wasn't happening. And it was past 48 hours, and they were on the phone. Like, the hospital obstetrician was on the phone to me saying, can you please come in now? You said that you'll come in, and we've got our team ready to do this, and da 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 da. And I'm like,
Jesus.
yeah. I was like, okay, I'll come in soon. And I left it because I just thought there's a little bit more of a window, like, and but nothing was happening. And I cried because I was disappointed in what was going on. I was disappointed in my body. But at the same time, I love my body and I have to trust my body as well. And so I jumped in the car and I remember like there's a song from Forrest Frank and it goes, I'm gonna have a good day. And that song came on and it was like, yeah, I'm still going to have a good day, even though it feels like a bad day. I'm still going to choose to have a good day. And yeah, it's a beautiful day because my baby's going to come some way, somehow. So ended up back in the hospital and they induced me. And often if you're a multi or a mama that's had babies before, a little bit of syntocinon will just kick you off, and it didn't for me. It was just like they just took it to the top, and 12 or 13 hours of that later, I was just in so much pain, and ended up with epidural. And yeah, 12 or 13 hours of that, nothing was happening. There'd been no changes to my cervix, and the baby's heart rate started to decline, and yeah, there was some distress for baby, and so they turned off the syntocinon. Also at my request, I just said, can you just turn it off? And the obstetrician and her team, of course, came in and basically said, baby's tired and not happy anymore, and we've given it a good shot. I think that we should go for a cesarean now. And I just said, can you guys please leave the room because I need to process this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so they left the room, and everybody went out, and it was just me and my husband, and we just prayed, and we just waited until I was ready here and here, because I felt this journey was taking a different path, and it was like I could resist, but that didn't feel peaceful. But it felt more peaceful to allow what was opening,
Right.
this new experience that was opening. And so, yeah, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be okay. And so I went down to theatre, and Reagan and Nell, they were like held me like the whole time. Like, you want to talk about with women? These ladies are with women.
Midwife and doula. Reagan.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, midwife and doula, and amazing ones at that. And yeah, Reagan, because she was, midwife, was able to come down to the theatre with me and support. And my husband was there. And Reagan said to the doctors before we went down, she said, excuse me, are we able to, when the baby comes out, are we able to pull the curtain down? And in my head, I was thinking, oh, that's so nice of Reagan advocating for me. But I was thinking, I don't know if it's going to make a difference, because I've seen so many Caesars before as a midwife, but I was like, I'm cool with that. Anyway, the obstetrician said, oh, well, she hummed and hard, and she was like, oh, we don't do that. We've never done that before in this hospital, and da 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 da, but we'll see when we get down there. Anyway, we got down there, topped me out with epidural. Took a while to get, actually, so that I couldn't feel anything. And then when that was sorted, they did the incision, and yeah, as she started to come out, they said, okay, we're going to pull it down. She's going to come out now. They pulled it down, and I saw her come out. And the minute that I saw her, that flood of maternal bonding and love and attachment hit me.
Mm.
And I was, oh, like it was just like a million strings like attached to my baby. And I was like, I just wept because it was like the babies, my babies had been taken from me. They'd been stolen from me. Like, and this baby just came out of the ashes, like, and it was just like, I wept, and I looked at Reagan, and I just said, I just, I just feel like my babies, like God's given me back, something that I lost, like, and it was just so powerful because I was so afraid of the cesarean. Like, I didn't want to have a Caesar. I'd fought, but then it just felt different. This experience was opening up something different for me.
Mm.
And what I encountered in that experience was that I was able, on the table, when I'm like, I could go down the fear pathway, but I was able, with the skills and insights that I now carry, I was able to gently rein my mind in and reassure it and strengthen it in the crisis moment, and comfort it,
Mm.
nurture it, so that it was able to move through. And the experience just brought so much, like, who would have thought like that type of birth could bring such healing,
Yeah.
and also empowerment and strength. Like, it was like, man, I'm so strong. What I've been through, I'm strong. Like, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, I'm so grateful for it. Like, I never wanted to have the cesarean. I never wanted it. But I am so grateful.
Mhm.
I can also now, um, I have the skill set to draw on to share with women who are on the table, and who are afraid in that space when things have worked out that way. And
Mm.
so yeah, that's Zaha, and she's beautiful. She is such a delight. She's the connector baby, so she's like blood connected to every single one of our 8 other children, and she's just a joy. She's just beautiful. And I'm an older mama this time round, so first time round young mum, now older mum, and I love it. It's so nice being an older mama and having the wisdom, and just, yeah, there's joy at the end of the journey, and I'm so grateful for it. Yeah.
Yeah, you talking before about when Zaha was first born by cesarean and the difference, and that you were able to quieten those fear thoughts and sink back into trust and love and connection. It reminds me of what Gabor Mate says. He says with trauma, it's not about what happens to us, but rather about what happens inside of us in response to what happens to us. And so much
Yes.
of that is dictated by the way we are treated by those
Yes.
around us, by the environment that we're in at that time. And so you having, your loving man who understands your needs, and your midwife who knew how to really be with you in that moment and honor your needs, and ensure that you could still meet your little baby in love, despite it not looking anything like what you had planned for and hoped for, meant that what I put this meme out once on social media many years ago that said a good midwife can mean the difference between a difficult birth being traumatic and a difficult birth being empowering. And I think this is a beautiful example of that sentiment. Yeah. Uh, so I wanted to, I just wanted to reiterate that point. I think a lot of people believe that if birth doesn't go the way they'd hoped, or if it ends up taking a different path, if their home birth ends up needing to be a hospital birth, or their biggest fear is having a repeat cesarean when they're going for a VBAC, for instance, I just want to reassure them that it's not about how we give birth. It's about the preparation we do and the lead up to it. It's about the support that we have around us. It's about, believing in ourselves and trusting our instincts and our intuition, which you've talked about earlier in the podcast. These are the things that matter and will mean that you can come out the other side of a birth that looks nothing like you'd hoped, still feeling positive and empowered, and healed through it. Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with all of that. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that, I think for me personally, it was like after the first home birth, I was never going back, like never going back. And I couldn't see how a medicalized birth would be empowering. Like I just, but you're 100% right. In terms of like what Gabor Mate, is that how you say his name? Yeah, says it's the preparation, the support, and we can be set up to fail, or we can be set up to succeed, and or set up for the positive. And I just experienced from that birth that it can be a positive thing, as long as this is able to rise, as long as there's a peace, and peace doesn't just have to be the set of circumstances that's in front of you, what you want and what you don't want. It kind of surpasses that. It's like the ability to reassure yourself under the pressure of something that may be difficult, and having those right reassurances, I have found, is what helps to pull you through. And with the work that you do, I've worked with women, alongside women that have also worked alongside you, and they have been equipped and redefined their birth trauma through a positive experience. And it's powerful. It's really powerful.
Yes, so powerful. And I had meant to say before, when I went off on that sort of tangent talking about Kiki's birth experience, is that after Kiki gave birth, she, like you, has this passion for like women's voice being heard in the birth space, and mothers taking back the power around their pregnancy, birthing, postpartum experiences. And she was like, I have a fire in my belly and I want to give back, in ways that I was given to by the incredible midwives, one of whom was Reagan, who rallied around her when she was dropped by her midwives at kind of 38 weeks, because she was making choices that they didn't feel okay with. Whereas these amazing midwives who we are connected with are all about supporting women to stand in their power in birth and to exercise their right to choose how their birth path, right? And Yeah, and so out of that developed this Wise Woman Network, which is like an online community Facebook group. So anybody who's listening who's either a birth worker or a woman who feels really strongly about this sort of advocating for women's rights in birth and that sort
Yeah,
of thing, join that page, Wise Woman Network.
yeah,
You
100%.
yeah, and that's and Naomi, you and I are part of the sort of I
Collective.
guess committee or yeah,
Yeah,
the collective that's kind of behind all that. So we're doing some beautiful, exciting work in this
yeah,
field.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I feel to be in that collective of powerful, woman loving, woman centered, woman, woman supporting woman,
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's unusual to have that, yeah, set of, well, skill set, but also, yeah, heart set, I think, and yeah, it's who knows where it will go. I think if women, um, yeah, can jump in, then definitely do so, because you'll find gold in that space. Yeah.
yeah. Naomi, you talked earlier about that you do some work in sleep consultancy, baby sleep.
Yeah.
And I know for me, it's a little triggering when I hear people work in helping mothers to get their babies to sleep. And I think you'll know what I'm referring to here is that, uh, yeah. So I don't know if you want to just share, because there may be listeners who are going, oh no, Naomi's one of those who kind of advocates for, cry it out or like, yeah, and you're shaking your head right now. So yeah, is there anything you want to just share before we wind it up about that work that you do?
Yeah. Yeah. So, how did I come into that? I was working at a place called the Allan Barron Family Centre, which is in Queensland. And we would take the worst of the worst cases across Queensland and a portion of New South Wales, with sleep and settling, feeding issues, behavior, that sort of stuff. And it was from birth pretty much to, say, 5 years old. But majority of the work was around sleep and settling. And so I learned in that space, responsive settling, and the evidence around it, the science around it, the science around sleep. And I saw with my own eyes mothers who were in crisis mentally because of sleep deprivation. I saw a full turnaround, and the attachment and bonding's messed up because they just don't, that, like, even the thought of their child is like anxiety provoking because of the sleep deprivation and the cry and the,
Yeah.
but I saw them leave connected, um, well rested, and back on track. And I thought, wow, yeah, this there's something in this. Um, and then I I also had my third baby around that time, and I implemented it. I was having big problems with my second baby, but my third baby, I implemented the stuff that I was learning, and it worked. He was like the best sleeper. And so I was like, okay. And then I started to really, um learn, like, started to look at sleep consultants, and um and I started to think, like, and then I looked at sleep consultant stuff, and then I also was in the maternal world and coaching, and what I was seeing is that, um actually, this stuff doesn't work as well at home.
Mhm.
Like, um it worked in the center when there's someone alongside you 24/7 in your ear, supporting you, teaching you what this means and how this works and what's this happening, and that in your ear, supportive 24/7. So it was a 5-day parenting education program, and we were with them, alongside them 24/7. But you put it into the home environment and it wasn't working. And so I was like, what is going on here? And so I started like doing a whole lot of research around it, and in my own practice, listening to the feedback from mothers. And what I learned is that, the science is very confusing. The science is all over the shop, and you don't have like a start here and a flow to here. And so I had to first of all start with the science. How does sleep work? Like specifically, like what part goes where in the jigsaw, and how do you bring it together? And so that's what I first started doing. So the course that I created, it nailed, I feel like it's fully nailed the sleep side of things. The science side of things with sleep. Then it was like, okay, because a baby does cry, babies cry, like that's the reality. And even a baby, when you're hands-on, can cry, and so the support that I ensure, very important to be responsive to the needs of a baby or a child. We know that in the attachment and bonding process, but there's also the crying that takes place, and that is where mums find it the most challenging to walk through, whether it be the setting up a routine, or a flexible routine, or whether they are putting their baby to sleep. It's the crying that's the challenging part. And so I developed these kind of like reassurances for the mind under the pressure of crying as a baby transitions. If you get around the 4-month mark, there's often a little bit of a up and down that happens as their pattern starts to evolve. And so it's like journeying through that to allow them the opportunity and the space to develop a degree of self-regulation with your support, but it's holding on to the right reassurances to be able to journey through it smoothly. Because what often happens for a mother is that she falls into crisis, and then she's up and down with whatever she's doing, and then it spirals, it sort of, and so my heart is really with sleep and settling. It's more giving the right reassurances to the mum that she needs for the particular set of situation that she's experiencing, and then looking at the science and the developmental age, of the child and what's going on there, and bringing all of that together so that it's a more smoother journey. Because we all know the first year of development is up and down like a bridesmaid, like it changes, like, and your sleep is like changing because development is changing. So we go with these flows eventually, like, and that's what I say to mamas. One of the reassurances that I speak is that sleep is actually about the long game. It's not about what's happening right at the second. It's actually setting up your baby and yourself for the long game, so that once their patterns naturally evolve, then they've got the skill set as well as you to, journey through that and get to the other side where they'll be having a big chunk in the lunchtime, and they'll, that's just the normal pattern of how it evolves for every baby. But I think the key is looking at a baby's pattern, not looking at a clock, not looking at a textbook, looking at your individual baby and the patterns that are evolving for them, and then supporting them through that pattern with responsive care and settling and the reassurances for yourself as a mama.
Yeah, because if you can't call on or count on those reassurances, and you do, as you say, spiral into this like um
Panic.
panic, yeah, that activation
Yeah.
of that sympathetic nervous system, and that is going to do nothing towards supporting your child to sleep, because you're energetically very in tune with one another, as mother baby is like. So if mum's feeling able to stay calm and reassured, then that's going to translate to a calmer baby. um,
Exactly. And
yeah.
I think also with sleep consultants, I think this is a generalized statement, but they prescribe something
Mm,
for a child or a family,
mm,
and you just can't do that because it doesn't work. It actually never works. The things that I've seen in practice over years, it never works. You can't just prescribe it and then it fits. You have to look at the temperament of that baby. You have to look at the parenting style of that person, the personality type even of the parent,
mm.
because you set them up with some sort of routine and they're going to fold like that because it's not even in their style of parenting. Like, you've got to look at the full picture and each person as an individual in the picture, and then bring in the responsive care, and the reassurances, and then you see some positive stuff. But
Yeah, really individualized support.
yeah,
I knew there was more of that in the birthing sphere, right? Like
I
there
know.
were these blanket rules and routines that are dumped onto people instead of
Yeah, I
going.
read this book. I can't remember. I think it's called Novice to Expert. It's a nursing book.
Mhm.
It talks about, when we begin supporting people in care, we do what the textbooks say. We prescribe how it's supposed to be, and we stick with this and we stick with that. But as you go on further into that journey, you start to realize it doesn't work, and what you've actually got to look at each person, and then you flow with however that is going. So I think if we as practitioners do that, we actually, we're going to help people better, I think.
Absolutely. And there would be a whole lot less trauma.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel like, well, we've extracted so much
We've covered a lot of ground
incredible,
today.
like precious gems from you vulnerably sharing the story of yours, Naomi. Thank you so, so much for that. And if anybody has been listening and wants to connect with you, perhaps work with you, um, then I will leave links in the show notes for people to be able to do that. Do you work with your sleep consultancy sort of work? Do you do that online as well, or is that only for
Yeah,
people? Yeah. Okay,
do it,
great.
do it all online. I do my coaching and consultancy work all online.
Okay,
Yeah. And
great.
I also am creating like programs for organizations as well. So I do a little bit of everything. So
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Naomi. You are an absolute gem, and I'm so grateful that our paths crossed.
me too. Thank you, Carla. Thank you so much.